Thank you so much. So Chudney Ross, welcome back. I am so excited to get a chance to talk to you again. I have told you before, I love this title, Chief Kid Officer. I feel like that should be a cabinet level position. So I want to see if we can make that happen. But I had the opportunity to talk with you last month with some of your colleagues from the Jane Club. But for those people who are just watching who may not be as familiar with you, I'd love to start by having you tell us a bit more about yourself, a bit more about the mission of the Jane Club and your role and the other work that you do.
So I was brought on with the Jane Club at its inception and what our mission was, we were going to create a community space, a co-working space that really encompassed and took care of the working woman. So not everyone, not all of our members are women, not all of our members are parents. However, we had on-site childcare and everything that might help a woman excel her career. So everything from meditation to workouts to learning experiences and community networking events. And then obviously the pandemic switched us up and we've become an amazing virtual space of community and learning for now a worldwide community, whereas we were just serving a very small group in LA. So it's been exciting to grow and change and pivot during this time. Also a learning experience, as it has been for everyone. And for me, I created the nest at the physical space in the Jane Club, which was a safe space for us to care for your children while you got to get your work done. So these parents got to really focus on their careers, but knowing that their children were close and safe, but also having an enriching experience. They weren't just you knew that they were safe and they were close, but they were also having age-appropriate learning activities. And we saw babies to preschool age, mostly non-school age children, that we could really do exciting learning experiences. And you could pop in to breastfeed or spend some time with your child so you knew that they were close by and you weren't missing out on those moments as well. So it was a really special place to be a part of. Pivoting into the virtual space with childcare is different, but we wanted to really keep that enrichment learning experience going for our members' children. And now we're worldwide, so being able to see multi-age children, and most children are home. So as we saw mostly the non-school age, now we get to really approach the older children as well and find experiences to really engage with them in a small group setting virtually. Which is a version of childcare, because you know that if your child can really focus and be connected with over a screen and engaged, that maybe you can step away and have a meeting or really focus on your work, which has been so hard during this time. So I do love my title, Chief Kid Officer, but people are always like, what does that mean? And it's just, I got to do all the creating of the program for the children, and I continue to curate that program online.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and your passion for kids and education really seems evident. And I love that you all have pivoted to also include virtual childcare as a part of the Jane Club, because as I talk to friends who are working at home during the pandemic and who have children, it is a concern, right? So I love that this is part of the work that you all are doing, and I will ask about that a little later. I wanted to actually start with you being a mom. And I know that in the bio, you say, most importantly, you're a mom. I love following you on Instagram because the pictures of your girls are precious and their personalities shine through. And I'm curious, how did the experience of becoming a mom change the way that you looked at work-life integration and childcare?
It's so interesting because from a very young age, I knew I wanted to be a mom and I knew I wanted to work with children. So we were talking before that I went straight into teaching from college with Teach for America. And I continued as a teacher after that and opened my own business, Books and Cookies. But I always knew that my focus was children, that I wanted to also be able to have children of my own. So the parenting was very eye-opening, even though I'm much older than my little brother. So I was there when they were small children, and my mom was able to have help with us. But I was like, oh, I'm going to pop this baby out and go right back to my business. I was running a struggling business at the time, a children's bookstore. And you're like, wow, like your life totally shifts. This child's life depends on you. You have to keep them alive and enrich them and raise good humans. And it's a lot of pressure. And it's such a special experience, but it is very, very all consuming. And we, as as an entrepreneurial woman, I really wanted to continue the work I did, but found it very hard to juggle that. I was fortunate enough that I worked with children, so I could, strap my baby on my back or have a high chair next to me, but that doesn't work in all situations, and I had a couple experiences where people would be like, the baby would be crying in the background and they'd be like, oh, well, if you can't handle your home life and your work life. And so it was very eye-opening that not everyone had that same experience that I did. Working with children, I was able to have a crying baby on a telephone call. Still, sometimes, I never know who's going to walk through the door right there. There may be a child pop into this Zoom with us because I got two here in the house, and no childcare during this time. So it was very eye-opening that it's a juggle and often a struggle. And that for me, even though I have a partner who is helpful at times, he's out of the house for his work day. And so there are moments that I have to decide whether I'm going to be 100% business owner or 100% parent. And sometimes that's 60-40 or whatever that is. And for me, in my bio, it says that I'm a mother first. And that's how I was raised, that I would prefer to not be a great business owner and be a great mom. But that's not for everybody. And that's okay. We're all having this experience of life. We want to be the best parent and raise the best children we can. And sometimes that's going to take away from other parts of your life. And that's a juggle. When I leave the house and I do have childcare, my husband's here with my kids, I know I can be 100% business owner and be working towards those goals. And that's a challenging thing. You want to know that your kids are well taken care of and that you have that support so that you can put your all into whatever you do. But I am very, very understanding that I've been fortunate in the career choice that I've chosen to be able to float like that. Not everyone can float like that in careers that they choose.
Sure, certainly. Well, if your little ones do come in, that is perfectly okay.
Well, the baby's sleeping, luckily. She'd be a lot, but the big girl is virtual learning today.
I really appreciated your honesty around that. At times it's a struggle. And particularly in this moment, I see so many of the parents in my life, right? People who are parents, really struggling, particularly mothers in this moment, and feeling a lot of guilt related to not being 100%, because they're also juggling, trying to work, trying to, raise wonderful human beings, trying to deal with their own experience of this pandemic, right? And all the emotions and upheaval that's caused. So I like this idea of just sort of normalizing that, like, yeah, it's a struggle. And sometimes it won't be, 100% here, 100% there. And there are choices that need to be made around that. I'm really curious to talk about childcare in the context of this pandemic, because I've heard that something like 40% of childcare programs are on the verge of closing permanently, in part because of lack of government support, but also because of lost tuition during the months that families have been sheltering in place. So I'm curious your thoughts about how this speaks to the systemic failure in supporting affordable childcare, especially when we need it the most.
I mean, this year has been so hard for everybody, and also deciding what safe choices there are for your children. Some people had to continue to use daycares through this time. And so it needs to be part of this stimulus package for parents. And I know that there are moves towards doing that. But we always talk about, I feel like always in government, they're talking about putting more money into the schools and how we have to get these schools opened. But what about early childcare? And what about these daycares? And also making sure that they continue to get the money to be able to provide enriching experiences. So for all women, you want to know, not that just that your child's safe, which is absolutely the highest priority, but you want to know that your child is not just sitting somewhere. And I think that was the struggle with the pandemic at home, is sometimes I had to put my kids, or I still do, in front of the TV. And I know that that's not the right choice for my baby, but at the moment, that's what I have to do. And so we need to be able to give all women, all parents, the choice to have positive choices to put their children into safe, educational, enriching programs. And not just for, at the Jane Club, obviously these women are paying for this, but this needs to be something that's across the board, and something that I know that a lot of larger businesses are beginning to do, either support their families with their childcare funding, or create spaces in their buildings to be able to have similar to what we have had at the Jane Club physically. We need to be supporting these our youngest children. Yes, once they get to school, they need these experiences as well. But what about them younger? And I know that there are some conversations around, putting more money into the stimulus packages and into schools, as well as we need to be paying childcare workers more to be able to improve the whole infrastructure of care for these young children, and offering an optional pre-K program. I know my daughter went to a pre-K program because of her where her birthday fell, but it was a program that I paid for. Being able to have if we're putting money into the schools, being able to support the 3 and 4 year olds as well. But having the businesses, if you're working for a large business, I know that Patagonia, I just read that Patagonia, who makes jackets and things, has now on their main campus childcare. But think about all these big companies. If they took some of the load for their workers to have these opportunities, it's only going to do great for their company, because everyone has more time to focus on their job and on moving forward. And obviously in the pandemic, that's been different because people are working from home and doing the best they can during this time. But as we move back into, I think that a lot of people will be allowed to work from home because we've seen that it really works. But being able to support families in bringing childcare into the home, or finding places that are safe and enriching, I think is the most important.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm an optimist, and I like to look towards the future. So I think about this in terms of an opportunity to do some things differently, right? And to support children and families differently coming out of this pandemic in a way that is healthier, right? And that allows everybody to thrive. So I heard you say people are having conversations around, offering optional pre-Ks, paying childcare workers more, which I fully support, right? Our childcare workers, our teachers don't get paid nearly enough for the work they do. And that businesses are starting to offer childcare on site, which is actually really exciting. And if you think about it, actually, of course, like, why wouldn't you? It actually will have an impact and make your workers more effective in the long run.
I also heard that there are babysitting companies such as Helper that provide like the business can pay for part of the childcare and the parents pay the rest. So you can have childcare in your home, because I know not all businesses are working from, large campuses like Google or something. But I'm just going to put it out there that all of those big companies that are working from huge campuses, like some of these car companies, Toyota and things like that, they need to be providing for their families. And then you will see people come back to work from maternity leave and think quicker, because they're able to go and spend that time with their children still. Many of these big companies, I remember when it was very hip to put like meditation pods and gyms and things. I mean, childcare should have been before all those. These are ways to support our employees. And even if it's not a huge percentage, maybe these are women and men that are not jumping into parenthood because they're worried about their careers going forward. So finding ways to support everyone going forward, I think, is just such an important conversation.
Yeah. I love that. First, I love that you put that out there. Like, let's speak it into existence.
That's what I do all day with my business. I've been very stagnant during this pandemic. It's been really hard for someone who's very social and also loves to be out in the world, and has been really focused on my children and keeping us safe. And mentally healthy, and continuing to smile and lots of fresh air. But in this last, couple months, I'm really ready to start spreading my wings again. And I've been just sort of putting things out into to the ethers. And I do think that through that positivity, things will come into being. So I'll put that out there for
Yes, I love it. I second it. And we need that, right? We need the people to dream bigger, and again, to dream of what could be. And it, again, this just sort of feels like a no-brainer to me, even as someone who doesn't have children. I think that those resources are really important, because we want people to be able to bring their full selves and to be caring for people in a very holistic way. And of course, that includes their families. And so there is a mandate, I think, for these businesses to really invest in that. So you talked about some different resources that businesses should offer to parents. What other things do you think maybe businesses could offer to achieve better work-life integration, and especially helping parents back into the workforce after a break?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it was Australia just made mandatory leave after miscarriages, that you're allowed to have a leave, like a maternity leave paid. I feel like we just need to, which the Jane Club was making an effort to do, was to think about everywhere that people need support. We as women are caring for a lot, not just our children, but maybe you're caring for a parent or your pets or whatever it is, and you're taking care of the house, and a lot of the housework falls on you. Finding resources to really support people and women in all parts of their life, whether it be medical, finding time to do those medical appointments and care for yourself. I was just saying, I don't think I've been to the dentist since before my children were born, which is like 9 years ago. So that's something I really need to focus on in 2021. But like really thinking about finding time to be able to focus on our whole selves as we move forward, to pursue our dreams. I know that, I've been very focused on parenting as well as pursuing my dreams, but my health is most important to making that happen. On the airplane, they tell you to put your face mask on before your children. You have to really think about all aspects of that. And yes, that includes meditation, that includes physical working out if that's what you want to do, or being able to really support all parts of our lives. And that makes us better people in business, that makes us better parents, that makes us better human beings. And that through that feeling sort of well taken care of and held and supported, anything is possible, and then we can go forward from there. So yes, I think that I think childcare is a huge part of it. I just think, I don't know why we don't focus on our children more. Our children, this is the future of your business, of our government, of everything. These small people that we're not paying as much as we pay other people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I along with childcare, another one of your passions is literacy. I mean, we've talked about your, children's bookstore and books and cookies. And can you talk a little bit more about your work in that area? You're also an author. Can you talk a little bit more about your work in that area and the connections between literacy and readily accessible childcare?
Yeah, so Books and Cookies originally also started as a physical space. I did close it before the pandemic, but we were a children's bookstore that I very quickly learned was not about being a bookstore. It was a community space for families with small children to join and find a space to connect. And also, when I first had children, the first thing you need to do is find a community, because you feel very alone in this craziness of not sleeping and not figuring out how to breastfeed or whatever those struggles that we have in those early days. So we very quickly built community in Santa Monica around families with young children, and started to offer story time and other classes, ways for people to connect and learn together and have enriching experiences, which is very much what went into the Jane Club building of the Nest program, was sort of that same community feeling, even though the parents only popped in now and then, but building community for these families. And I've always loved books. And so it made sense in my life to build this type of community around books. So similar to behind you, your shelves, children getting to bond over sharing a book, or a parent reading to a child, was really an exciting growth opportunity. It was a struggle for many years. I was open for 7 years. But when I decided to close, it wasn't because I wasn't willing to fight for the struggle anymore. I just found that people were wanting to bring it outdoors, which is so crazy because now everyone wants to do everything outdoors now with the pandemic. So we were starting to do our story times and building community with those same families, or families with young children, in parks or at birthday parties, or even at huge events. Huge brands would hire us to come in, and people would be like, at this carnival, I don't know how you're going to do books, but people sometimes want that quiet moment to sit and have a snuggle and share a book. And so it was really fun to be sort of recreating the way we share books. As a person, reading before bed is really nice, but you can also read in a park. You can read under the Ferris wheel. You can read everywhere. And so finding ways to really share books in a different way, and in a loud way, not the way you share at the library, which is also beautiful. I love the library. It's actually National Library Week. But we sing and we dance and we move our bodies and we act silly with books, because books can be really fun. You don't always have to be in front of a screen. You can, grab a stack of books and it can also hold your attention. So really, Books and Cookies turned into a mobile venture. We were working on a truck before the pandemic that never really panned out, but now we're virtual and sharing what we do online. So similarly to all of our classes in person were parent and me, so less childcare versions, though I would go into many preschools, or my staff would go into many preschools and share in that same way. But now virtually, we have 2 a week, and it's really amazing how these very young children can really connect with me for a short time. So we can sit and you can know that your child will be engaged and hang with me on a screen, because I can see them and I'm talking to them with their names. And you can go and have a coffee or have a meeting or finish those emails that you haven't been able to do. So very similar to what we've created through the Jane Club, being able to engage children. But with Books and Cookies, it's high energy, interactive story times online, which hopefully will be back in person at some point.
Yeah, I hope for that too. So I love this invitation to sharing books, to sharing a book, as someone who, as you can tell, likes to read. I love this invitation of sharing a book. And I love the idea of making it mobile, right? And that doing it outside and outside of traditional ways. We're used to thinking about children engaging with books at the library, but there's all these different kinds of ways that kids can be engaged in reading and have it be fun and, moving bodies. I love all of that. We're almost out of time, but as you were talking, I had a question pop into my mind, which was, what is your favorite children's book?
Oh, it's so hard because I have my favorites for reading aloud, and my favorite read aloud is Pete the Cat, just because it has songs in it. And you can actually just read it through and dance and sing, and it's silly and funny and easy. Growing up, I know we just lost Beverly Cleary, but I was a big fan of all of her chapter books, and they really inspired me to write, which is why I ended up with my book, Lone Bean, writing books for children that are relatable. So I didn't get great reviews on my book, but kids love it because I wrote it before I was a mom. So she says stupid and things that I might not write as a mom in a book, but that kids really relate to, that they're dealing with these experiences. Sometimes life isn't perfect, but you have to decide what kind of choices you're going to make. And so I would have written it differently as a parent. And when I read it aloud, it's so funny. I read it differently. But for the group it's for, which is 8 to 10-year-olds, they really connect with the character. And I get letters all the time, which is really why I wrote the book, not for the reviewers, but I get letters all the time, asking when we get to see her next adventure, like with this little girl named Bean. People want to know where she's going. So it's one day I will be able to focus and write from the voice of an 8-year-old, but today I got enough on my plate.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I don't blame you. But we'll look forward to it whenever that happens. Thank you so much, Chudney. Just last question. Where can folks find you and engage with you if they're interested in learning more?
Well, please learn more at the Jane Club. We have a big summer conference coming up, which is going to be a really fun event to get a taste of what the Jane Club is about. And we have children's classes and programming all along with that. So your children can be engaged while you join in on all of the content. But at the Jane Club on Instagram or janeclubla.com. And for me personally, I'm at Books and Cookies LA on Instagram and on and my website is Books and Cookies LA. And I am Chudney L. Ross. And you can see all of my shenanigans with my children, but really just surviving this pandemic time and ready to move into what the future holds with positivity and light.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to joining you in positivity and light. And thank you so much for coming back. It's been a pleasure to connect with you again.
Thank you, Kelly. And I'll put in the chat all of that I added. I just said a lot.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.